This week, the wearables battle heats up as Google buys Fitbit.
While Apple AirPods and the Apple Watch make big strides.
Then Twitter says no to political ads. Will Facebook follow suit?
I'm Alexis Scordato, and this is Future Forward.
I am Steven Rosenbaum. Let us launch. Hey, Alexa, how are you?
Hey, Steve. Happy Marathon Sunday.
I'm sorry. I'm a little sweaty because I just got back. I raced here off the Verrazano Narrows Bridge to do this podcast with you.
Wow, I feel so special.
Do you want to see my number?
Yeah.
I'm not going to show it to you. I'm not going to show it. All right. So we're going to jump right in. We've got our friend Glen Zorpet from IEEE Spectrum on the line to talk about the awesomeness that is Apple AirPods and what's going on with Google. So, hey, Glen. So the Consumer Electronics Hall of Fame, I think of that as a mature honor to a device or an object that's been around a really long time. But AirPods have been around for like 12 seconds.
Yeah, actually, it seems like it. But I think they were introduced in 2018, it might have been. 2017, 2018, that time frame. Yeah, I have to, full disclosure, I don't own AirPods. I have small ear canals. They don't fit in my ear. And I actually prefer wired earbuds anyway. I don't like to have to charge things.
So,
but they're amazing piece of kit, I have to say.
So I have to tell you, I agree with everything you said. I resisted buying them. I thought they looked goofy. I didn't want to charge something else in my life. And I can't quite explain why it's like, it is the thing that makes Apple such an extraordinary company, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
They're expensive, and to Alexa's point, they're disposable in a way that seems irrational, and yet, if you go on the subways in New York, literally every other person is now wearing them.
I feel so silly because it's like a commercial, but they really are magical. Like when I saw the keynote when they were introduced, the word magical was used, and I was like, this is just Apple being ridiculous again for the 100th time. And then I actually got a pair, and I was just like blown away.
Now, I have to say this. The new price point for the AirPod, what is it, Pro? Is that what they're calling them?
Yep.
At $249, that might be my pain threshold. That might be like, yeah, but then the reviews are also spectacular. Explain, Glenn, do you understand why? Why?
Well, Apple is taking steps towards something with the AirPods, and that something is wearables. So, you can't justify that kind of price with sound quality, because the AirPods have fine sound quality, but for $40 or $50 at most, you can get Japanese earbuds, balanced armature earbuds that sound as good or better. In fact, I've got a pair of balanced armature earbuds that I paid $35 for, shipped from China, and they sound better than Apple AirPods. But that's not the point. These are a classic Apple product in that they are a seamless integration within Apple's ecosystem. So you're wearing these AirPods, you're listening to music, you get a phone call. The entire process is seamless. Plus the fact that they have brilliantly conceived of ways you tap the EarPods to change volume or change this or that. It's phenomenal. It's a clear example of Apple's genius in integration. And when I say it's a step towards something, it is, at places like Dolby, we've published an article by Dolby's chief scientist, a very brilliant woman named Poppy Crum recently. Dolby is now working on something they call hearables, and they are going to take this whole thing into a much higher level, where the idea is that you will be wearing things like this in your ears, and they will be loaded with sensors and microphones to the extent where you're standing in a crowded cocktail party in a large room, and you're wondering what the people are talking about on the other side of the room, and you turn towards them and tap your earbuds or whatever it is that you've got in your ears, and you can listen to that conversation selectively, almost like you're standing there with the people.
Almost like a spy.
Yes, exactly.
We're just getting spied on perpetually. We just need to accept that.
So-
If it's not your AirPods and you're opting into it, it's an Alexa or Google Home that's doing it.
So, by the way,
Right.
I just want to say, because here's my little charger thing. The other thing is that this little click that it makes when it closes
They get the details right, don't they?
is so charming.
And the way when they're running out, you can plug one in and it charges so fast.
Yeah.
And then you can like swap them. It's amazing. Glenn,
Yeah.
I'm so curious. When you say that your set sounds as good, how do you actually I guess what are the inputs that say the quality is good?
Well, I have done a number of reviews of earbud headphones over the years for Spectrum, and so there are tests I go through. Like when I was testing earbuds and headphones, I have a whole bunch of very high resolution audio files that I use. I also have something called a Dragonfly Red DAC. It's a special digital to analog converter that plugs into my smartphone, and I have an app that will send the data stream for the music out rather than going through the phone's internal DAC. It goes out through this external DAC, which I paid $200 for. Again, it's called Dragonfly Red, and it's a higher quality DAC than you get in a phone, and it also is not subject to all the stuff that goes on in your phone. So the audio quality is super pristine and high. And I use that, and then I listen to orchestral classical music. I'll listen to vocal jazz music. I'll listen to screechy heavy metal rock. And I'll go through all these things, listening to the same passage over and over again through all of these different things to try to hear how versatile it is, how it handles these different kinds of music, that sort of thing.
So one of the things that came out of the press around the AirPod Pro is that Apple is just killing it in the wearable space, just like extraordinary growth. In fact, what was it? Year over year, blah, 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 I forget grew a staggering 54% in the wearables category.
Yeah, it's almost the same as their Mac division.
Yeah, 6.5 billion. You know, I remember when Apple started pulling away from the Pro software, when they got away from Final Cut, and they and you could just feel the company say, we want big consumer ideas.
Right.
But does anybody understand? Like, I guess I don't understand the noise canceling charm. Like, I guess the ones I wear don't seem noisy, so I don't know why noise canceling seems like a good thing.
You don't, I mean, when you're on the subway and stuff, you don't.
Yeah, but I kind of like the idea that I'm slightly aware of my surroundings. You know?
Oh. Well, I'm curious how your office is laid out now, but I think if you can imagine when you're in an open office plan at a desk with salespeople on your right and know other people on your left, the noise canceling can make a difference.
You know, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of it, but that's exactly right. You got open offices, everyone's talking, and now everyone's on headphones, and they're all listening to their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's move forward a little bit, because Apple's been killing it in the wearable space, both with the Apple Watch and with the AirPods, and now Google comes along with a spare couple $2 billion and buys Fitbit. That one I found to be a little bit of a stumper.
It's actually it makes a lot of sense in some ways. And so big companies in this space, like, for example, Apple, and for that matter, Google, although it's not Google's primary source of income, but companies that are making smartphones and mobiles in general kind of understand that there needs to be something else. So there's really nothing in electronics and consumer electronics that lasts forever. The smartphone's been around now for a long time by consumer electronics standards. So, I personally, this is not to say that I think it's going away anytime soon, but all good things must come to an end. And so there's this feeling that what lies beyond the smartphone? And no one really knows, but there seems to be this consensus slowly gathering that it's probably some form of wearable. And no one really knows exactly what that wearable is, but no one wants to be left out if it does turn out to be that wearables are the future. So, in the meantime, the existing wearables have started doing well. Apple's watch, which is considered a wearable, is doing extraordinarily well. I mean, so well that people are saying, yeah, this might be what's beyond smartphones in some way.
But did I get it wrong, or wasn't Fitbit just about to go down the drain? Wasn't Fitbit really struggling?
Fitbit had come far. I mean, there was a time in, ancient history being like, I don't know, 5 years ago or 6 years ago, when Fitbit stock was hit $45 a share. The Google deal priced it at a little over $7 a share. I don't know if that means it's close to going down the drain. I mean, I think it was more or less stable, but yeah, it come far off its high. But I mean, the thing is that Google has really stumbled in hardware. Google is sort of the butt of jokes when they've tried. They've got laptops, they've got the Pixel phones. They do have hardware, but none of it, is anywhere near Samsung or, some of the other LG or some of these other Android stalwarts, which is kind of ironic because Google was the driving force behind Android. So I think Google is a little bit tired of not being a force in hardware. So I think that's part of it.
So let's get to the unspoken but I think critically important topic in wearables, which is you now have this showdown coming. You've got Apple on one side and Google on the other, and the real kind of nadir middle ground is privacy, right? I mean, Apple doesn't sell advertising, so if you've got an Apple Watch and it's checking your heartbeat or your steps or any of this private stuff about physical health, it's not trying to sell you pills or creams. Google, on the other hand, is. Doesn't that make wearables like the center point of the debate over data and privacy?
Right. So, Google's head of hardware, who used to work for Motorola, took great pains at the time of the announcement a couple days ago to say, look, to offer what appeared to be ironclad assurances that they are not going to use data collected on their wearables, the Fitbit wearable, to sell ads. In other words, they have offered this assurance. He offered this assurance. He's on record saying that that's not going to happen. So in other words, they are not going to use that data to, to direct ads at you. And also they're not going to use any sort of data. They're not going to sell it. Which would be to my mind even more insidious if they were to sell that data, because now companies like insurance companies or others could potentially know this stuff about you. Now we should say, but first of all of this stuff is supposedly anonymized anyway. So the data that Google sells that comes from these sources is supposedly, it can't link to you as a person by anyone who purchases data. In other words, you're just a code number. And Google doesn't match the codes to people. So the data that they sell is supposedly anonymized. Now, there's been reports or suggestions that maybe this anonymization isn't so ironclad as we all thought. But we did get these assurances at the time that the Fitbit deal was announced that this tremendous amount of health data that's going to be collected is not going to be used for those purposes.
Yeah, this is the company whose tagline used to be "Don't be evil," and then they kind of said, "Yeah, be a little evil, just be slightly evil." All right.
There's like a, I don't know, this is a marketer in me. Like, even if it's not for the actual ad product, the insights alone. So, for example, you have Google Maps can take an entire market and understand when consumers are going to the doctor, what type of specialists those doctors' offices are. Now they have all of this consumer data around like just activity, like who are the people who are running. Just that alone allows them to sort of capture a story around a market. Are the people in the Midwest susceptible to, more preventative healthcare products because they're the most susceptible to being unhealthy, right? Like, I don't know.
Do you all remember when wearables first came out and there was these jokes going around, and I believe it was just apocryphal, but that cheating husbands were caught because the data from their wearable, their wrist-worn wearable, was showing elevated heart activity and excitement in the middle of the day when they were supposed to be at lunch or at work. And, I'm pretty sure that was apocryphal, but we are approaching an era where, there's going to be 24/7 monitoring of our physiological and even mental states at some point. And that data is going to be going to the cloud. I mean, the old days where you would just come home and plug your device into your computer and only your computer would have the data. Sorry, it's gone. Because if you really want interesting insights, it's got to go to the cloud, because that's where the heavy duty software is. And so, like it or not, that's where your data is going to be. But I think one question we can ask is that a reasonable price to pay for this tremendously powerful monitoring and software that we can all have now? I mean, we've already answered that, yes, we're willing to let Google sell data about us in exchange for us using search engine things. Google, we all know that Google, they admit it. They use that data to target ads to us. And all of us mostly say, okay, we shrug our shoulders. So we'll probably keep doing it in this new world of wearables, won't we?
Well, on that note, we'll pause, because otherwise we're going to get into a whole other conversation we don't have time for. But I am not racing out to buy a Fitbit, but I will go and think about it. And in the meantime, I will continue to make this little clicking sound. Thanks, Glenn, as always.
Sure. Happy to do it.
All right, Alexa. So we're shifting now to another light topic after we do privacy and Google. Now we're shifting to Facebook and political ads. And
I couldn't wait. This was like, I've been waiting to talk to you about this all week.
You're delighted, right?
I'm pumped. I mean, when I saw this on Twitter, I was like, I almost wanted to text you, like, Steve, let's just record right now.
So do you think that Jack did it for moral reasons or financial reasons, or just to fuck with Zuckerberg?
It could be all of the above. I actually would like to believe it's more of the first. Like, there's sort of this moral reckoning that I think is happening in the world. Like, everyone's values are swirling around, and we've talked about how sort of squirmy and uncomfortable and beaten down he was at TED. And so, he's had a few months to look in the mirror and say, do I want to wake up on the right side of history?
But I mean, if you dig below the headlines, the truth is they weren't making a lot of money with people buying political ads on Twitter. So it's not like, it's a little bit of a...
Yeah, but like neither is Facebook,
Yeah, that is true. So I guess I thought Facebook would just come out and go, okay, win. But it doesn't seem like they're going that way. I don't know.
No, they're going the opposite. It's almost like they're doubling down. Like, did you see the Sheryl Sandberg video?
No.
Just like, basically she says, like, this is what Mark said, and like we are in defense of free speech, and she just basically parroted everything that he had said at Georgetown, but it's in this like bite-sized 30-second thing, and I've seen it floating around everywhere. It's silly.
All right, so TechCrunch reports that Zuckerberg says that political ads will be 0.5% of their 2020 revenue, so negligible. They literally could take a zero and it would cost them nothing.
Yeah, but look at all the good PR they got.
Yeah, I don't know. And I guess as much as I'd like to believe that not taking political ads either, at Facebook or at Twitter or wherever else, Google, whatever, would actually make the social web a cleaner, safer place. Yeah, probably doesn't really change that much, right?
Well, people are going to be people, right? I think it's when I think about, just not being on Facebook, and this is what the conversation sounds like in my head. Oh, I can't give up Facebook because I'm going to lose touch with all of these people, and seeing the stream of baby photos and status updates and marathon celebrations, like, that's like BS. Like, no, at the end of the day, like, this is a platform that is actually making us lazier. I think if politicians or friends or family members want to communicate ideas and win hearts and minds in meaningful ways, we need to work harder. Putting up ads on Facebook, how is that going to rally constituents and get them to the polls? It's lazy. politicians and their campaign staff should not like lean on ads or think ads are the be all end all for like getting Americans to just rally around their platforms.
So I understand what you're saying, and I guess I would just say gently back. If you said to a marketing client of yours, listen, advertising is bullshit. You ought to make your products better so people love you, so they buy your products and tell their friends. They would say, excellent advice, Alexa. You're fired. I mean, that's why people buy ads. They buy ads to influence people. They buy ads because people are lazy and ads move them to action. So
I guess, yeah, but to counter that, I guess is where I'm different, because the last 3 jobs I've had as a marketer, like take Stack Overflow, for example. Stack Overflow grew to be a top 40 web property without having to advertise itself as the best site for developers to get answers to their questions. Like, most of the roles that I've had have not leaned on paid advertising. They've leaned on media, but like owned and like self-produced branded media.
All right. So let's actually go to Washington State, because this is, I think, maybe
messy.
Fascinating. So Washington State, that would be the place where Seattle is, for those of you who are geographically not connected. Washington State put out this very restrictive set of laws about political advertising, and the result was that Facebook and I think who else was it? Facebook and Twitter essentially said, we're not playing that game. We're just essentially going to step away from that state.
Yeah, the entire state said no political advertising, but then some ads got through.
Yeah, to tell us the story. So this is an article we found in The Verge that said, watch out, because where this is going is a mess. And I was a little surprised by it.
So, one, I actually had no idea that this was the state of affairs in Washington. And I wish it was talked about more, because we probably would have been able to learn something from it. So I guess Seattle City Council elections, there was a marijuana entrepreneur, Logan Bowers, and he ran for city council. And I guess the controversy here really, because it's Washington State and Seattle, because of like, I guess marijuana being one of the like top political issues. And so maybe that's actually where this gets like muddy, because it's like, is marijuana and sort of the conversation around it, to what extent is that a political ad versus not?
But isn't, I thought that the Twitter decision and the Facebook decision the other way was simply saying ads purchased by candidates. That was, I thought, what was getting litigated here. I mean, the political ad, as opposed to an ad, I approve this message. I'm Steve Roosevelt and I'm running for city council and I approve this message. I thought those were the ads that they were taking a swing at, but this was broader than that. This was any ad that touched a political issue.
Right, and I think that's the tricky part. I mean, I don't know, like, where do you draw the line? Sure. Even if someone runs an ad that is aligned with a politician's platform, then can you say it's political or not?
Yeah, fair enough. And then of course what will happen is, how will that work? So if Trump is banned from Twitter advertising, he'll just take his money and point it to people that want to talk about him but aren't. I don't even know how. I mean,
anytime, this is all hard, because anytime there are rules, people are going to find a way to bend and break the rules. And so even if they're not coming from the political campaigns, they will find allies and people who will run the ads as like independent citizens, is my guess.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. That being said, I still think Zuckerberg ought to man up and take the bite on the 0.5% of the revenue and get out.
It's just not worth it. That's the whole thing. Like, forget where you stand on the issues. It's like, it's not even worth the trouble anymore.
Right.
Like,
and there's a letter. There was a letter written by a bunch of Facebook employees saying to Mark, you gotta get out of political advertising. And then there was, in the New York Times, a fabulous scathing op-ed written by the author, the writer who wrote
Sorkin.
Aaron Sorkin. It was brilliant, you know, just brilliant, and basically called him out. So, you know, this is one of those places where he loses nothing by just taking a 0 on this test and saying, you know, hey, we've heard the public, and the public doesn't want us to be in the ad business.
Yeah, I mean, it's never too late for him to say, I've reconsidered my position.
But you don't think it's going to happen?
No, because I think at a subconscious level, he and Sheryl Sandberg can't possibly fathom anything that diminishes their control and influence in the world. I think that's where we're at. They'll never admit to it, but I think it's them like ceding to their like power, and they won't do that.
Well, that's a little grim. All right. So final chapter in today's show, something completely different. I found this video. I thought it was really charming. I wanted to watch it. Not because it has any great. Well, we'll talk about it. But so as we talk, I'm playing it. Oops. Wait. Hold on. Let's turn the sound down. There we go. So this is a video of self-assembling modular robots. I'm not sure why I think this is so fabulous, but I really do.
I mean, you're just so into like happy, good robots improving society. If you listen to the podcast, I feel like
maybe. Although, I mean, so for those of you who are listening to the podcast and not watching the video, this is a series of this is an MIT computer science and artificial intelligence lab. They built these little cubes, and they can self-assemble themselves. They can organize themselves, and they kind of climb on top of each other, and they make stacks, and they make little shapes. I guess I wanted to be able to get on the podcast today and say with great clarity what I thought the application was for this in the world, but I really couldn't come up with anything other than.
Oh, I immediately just thought Amazon warehouses. I was like, oh, Jeff Bezos is going to buy this technology, even though he already has things that pick up things from high shelves and move in the aisles. Like, imagine you have like assistant robot workers and that enable humans to like climb up them to grab things.
Oh, so you think it's a ladder? You think it builds a little ladder and then well, yeah, it's not sexy enough. I like it.
Or what about in construction?
I think I like it better when they cost a penny a piece, and literally you can roll into a situation where you need a little
Capsule?
It could build a little house. It could imagine.
Oh, that's cool.
Imagine if literally you just push a button and the back door of a truck opens up and they all climb out and build a little structure for you.
I mean, that is like the future of Burning Man right there.
There you go. All right. Well, with that, we are out of time. Thank you all for listening and for sending us lovely emails and telling us that we could do better or whatever. We've gotten a bunch of them this week. And the numbers are great. This is, by the way, show 101. So,
Woo!
Yet still no candles, no cake. But Alexa, see you next week. Have a good week.
Steve.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. We are out.